So firstly, let me begin by introducing myself. My name is Karen Downs. I have a small consulting business called the Flourish Initiative, and I also am a co-founder of an organisation called FemQ. And firstly, let me say a little bit about the Flourish Initiative. It's a business or a consulting and coaching, and really it's about bringing human flourishing and business prosperity into the one conversation. But more importantly now, it's about planetary flourishing as well. And I see all of those are interconnected and they are essential for our future. So flourishing is this notion that I see if Mother Nature does it beautifully, we can learn lessons from her, but also in our bodies, which is why it's so beautiful to have Pamela with us this evening. In our bodies, we intuitively know the wisdom that it takes for us to flourish and be all of who we can be and fulfill our potential. And that's the idea of flourishing, is it doesn't mean we're thriving all the time. In the notion that I bring about flourishing, it is that we have seasons of the soul and we honour the winters where we need to hibernate, we need to reflect, we need to take time out, as well as we need to blossom in the spring and harvest in the summer. So all of those seasons we see in nature are very much in our own system. And we see that very much in these times of COVID, which is why I'm doing and holding these conversations, is that in these times of distress, disruption, confusion, it's important that we come back to understanding who we truly are, reflecting upon what we need to flourish and how we can go about that, which is why these conversations of leading with grace and resilience are so important. And the program Leading with Grace and Resilience, Pamela and I were supposed to be leading that program. It's a 5-day program I've been running for 4 years. And this year, Pamela and I were scheduled to run one in Morocco and one in the UK, but of course with COVID, those 2 programs were cancelled. So here we are. The best we have is at least this one opportunity, but I decided to invite women that I've worked with or know as friends or colleagues from around the world who are not perhaps in leadership positions of politics or heading up corporations, but more, these are the women that I know are doing the critical work, the inner work, to bring about the transformation that's needed in the world. And they come in many, many different forms, these conversations. Last week we had Dr. Cilla Elworthy, who's leading the Business Plan for Peace and has been a pioneer in this field of 4 decades in working in peace building and conflict resolution. And so today's a very different conversation, and it's why all of the parts of the conversation are so important. So that's about me. And now I'd like to pause and just take a moment to welcome Pamela, beautiful Pamela. So thank you, Pamela, for joining us. I first met you, Pamela, in a Rebel Wisdom program back in 2018, I think it was. And I think I had a moment, certainly I had a moment where I was struck by 1, your beauty, 2, your grace. I'm always looking through that lens myself. And we had a moment together of just feeling that we needed to know each other, feeling that we needed to connect. And I think that's an important part of this conversation and the important part that we know as women that exists in us. It's not exclusive to women, but it's very profoundly what we feel intuitively and instinctively when we meet that field of resonance. So we began, and Pamela, your work is, as I know you, not all of the work you do, but as I know you, it's deeply connected to these words that we've introduced of desire, passion, and love. And these are incredibly important words at this time because many people are losing the sense of that. They're losing the sense of their desire for a future or hope for a future because we're losing it in our bodies. We're losing it, as I hear many people, this is just in my world, I hear many people speaking about feeling in despair, feeling confused, and not knowing where to source themselves to bring themselves fully back into the world and into life when we're in such restrictions around the world. So I think this conversation is a really important one to delve deeply, as I know you do. And you're also the leader of the Nordic Women's Gatherings, and I know that you have a huge network. And is it Stockholm you're now based in?
Stockholm and Helsingborg in the south of Sweden.
Yeah, okay, great. and very much the important work you're now doing with Thomas Bjorkman and the group in expanding. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, the work that you're doing with Thomas and our group that gathered together in Sweden. So recently, our last connection, Pamela and mine, was a gathering of 17 of us that gathered in on the island of Escarat in Sweden to do a deep dive into sense making, understanding what it will take to build our future, and how do we build the future from the future. Where is it that we can dwell in space, in time, and in our togetherness? So I want to pause there because I know that particularly for me in the Zoom calls, it brings a real sense of immediacy. I'm very present to you, Pamela, right now. And we have 12 that have joined us, and as much as we can't see their faces, perhaps we just have a moment where people can post in the chat geographically where they are, and we'll see your names, but geographically where you are and what brings you to the call today. Just a couple of notes of either. And perhaps, Pamela, you would like to add something to that. Is there a question you'd like to hear, ask people and respond in the chat?
Yeah, I would love if you also would write in the chat why you feel pulled to this conversation, because I really would like to talk into that space where your curiosity is. So like, what was the pull or your longing for going to this conversation? So if you write a sentence or two of why are you here? There are so many other things you could do or be tonight. So why did you choose this space? So I know where your curiosity goes. So thank you, Marie, from checking in from Stockholm. So the rest of you who is also here, please check in where you are seated, and also how come you're pulled to this space. Thank you for responding.
So all those messages are coming into us, Pamela, so I'm just going to read them out so that the other participants can hear them. So Johan from Varberg, Marie from Stockholm. Marie is curious about how to lead with grace. Johanna is from Gotland, Sweden, pulled by your amazing, expansive energy, Pamela, and curiosity to explore Karen. Debbie Edwards, here in Wirral from Liverpool. I feel called to join this conversation because my work has been taking me deeper into how I can fully show up as my true self, and then how that will impact my work with women and humanity as a whole. And delighted to be here. Sophie, Maristad, Sweden, curious to learn. Anna, that's in Sweden. Swedish, I can't get that one. Debbie Edwards, just reporting for everyone. And Debbie, hi, I've just read Debbie's out, right? And Vanessa, South of Sweden, wanted to share the space and interested in listening to the topics.
And Anna, who was writing in Swedish, just mentioned that she is from a town called Vara. So you got that.
Thank you. Beautiful. So thanks, everyone. So Pamela, do you want to respond to that before I begin in our conversation with some questions and prompting the dialogue? How would you like to begin?
I think I would love to dive deeper into our conversation. I can notice my system is already like entering a door of entering a door of out of what you said before. Yeah.
So just Sheila has now commented, greetings from West Sussex. I've been inspired by the Flourish activities over the last few months. Sheila, beautiful. Thank you, Sheila. So I want to begin the conversation because you and I have spent many conversations in this deep dive, so to speak, about women, about the feminine wisdom that is inherent in our system. and what activates that in our system, Pamela. So I'm curious because of the exchanges we've had, and we come from very different perspectives, but certainly I want to start with the notion of grace. So if we just pause for a second and everyone opens their hearts to this question of grace. What is grace? How do we lead from grace? We hear a lot about resilience, but I see the two as a dynamic duo. They must go hand in hand, because resilience without grace becomes force or stoicism, or we armor up. And you are an embodiment of grace for me, Pamela, because you tune into your system, you listen to wisdom other than knowledge or intellect. You're listening always to your body. So I want to start with that. If you could start the exploration with me in that realm, in relation to grace and the intuitive and our bodies.
Then I would start with what grace evokes in me right now is that grace for me is deeply connected to beauty. And beauty for me is deeply connected to navigate through life, connected to the mystery. And the mystery for me is to be in awe for life itself. And for me to be in awe for life itself is to be present to life. It is to be connected to my body when I take my morning walk. It is to be connected to the sun rising or the sky or the trees around me, and to really to pay attention to the beauty. And when I see the beauty and when I look for the beauty, then I notice that it connects me to love. And for me, love is very deeply connected to compassion. And for me, compassion, it is to be able, compassion is for me connected towards others. Of course, also to myself, but it is in a way to be more deeply connected to both myself, others, animal, and planet. And then for me, leading from that place means that I take myself, others, and what's in between into consideration when I make my choices.
So Pamela, I just want to acknowledge what I just witnessed happening, if I can, so that I'm also representing to our participants. We can't call it a process, but something just happened when you were talking that, and in that flow, you started speaking about the witnessing of beauty, of the sunshine, of the being in awe of the beauty. And then that meant the next unfolding, the beauty. What was the next word you said? Well, it doesn't matter. It's almost like it doesn't matter. What I could feel in you, and that's what I think we're looking for in this conversation and seeking, is how can we feel that in our bodies, that you take from externally what you see and bring it internally and transform it into compassion, into the outer expression of who you are in leadership and connecting to others and seeing the whole. So it's like what I could just feel in you is the dynamic that flows through you, into you, inside of you, opens your heart, expands who you are in the world, and how you embrace and include others in your decisions.
Yes, yes. I don't know what to say, but yeah.
I think one of the things that I was struck by as you were speaking also is that often we can speak of our experiences, but you and I both know as facilitators and program leaders that unless we can distinguish it, we can't share it. So that's why I was just, you were speaking, but I was listening from a perspective of what's actually going on in that system right now. How is that working? And I think one of the things that I see, you use the word awe, and I'd love you to comment, Pamela, because it's almost like what I saw just happen in you and how you expressed it is, I've been working in a series of the 12 virtues online in the last, well, I did 2 lots, so it's 24 weeks now. And one of the things that I could see and feel in you when you spoke is the awe of Mother Nature and the trees and the beauty and the sunshine. But my experience of you also, Pamela, is that you take that same level of awe, looking for the beauty, into human beings when you meet them.
Yeah, that is, yeah, I haven't looked at it that way, but when you say it, I can see it, because it is like when I meet someone, I see the best in them. And that is also something that I see is a part of grace. It is a part of seeing the awe, like the mystery in the person in front of me, seeing the best, seeing the beauty. So for me, that is also, that's for me is also about like my personal approach, and at the same time my leadership approach, and that is also my facilitation approach. That seeing seeing the best is also seeing a part of the unexpressed layer of potential. So it also, when we see the best in each other, we also evoke that to come forward. And in that, in that, it's also about having, in a way, the same approach to myself as well. Like what I am looking for or embracing is to see the best in me, or to not just see the best, but actually create a life and a devoted practice where the best in me come forward. And for me, that is very joined with the 3 words you put on this talk when it comes to love, pleasure, and desire. Because for me, these 3 words takes out the awe in me. And then it's also easier accessible to see the awe in others, but also being in approach to life and taking the choice of looking at life as awe, because that's very much what we do as children. Actually just looking at the rain or the storm or the tree or the grass or the ant as adventure, as an experience, as the mystery of something that wants to be received. Yeah.
I just had this visual when you said that, Pamela, of how often we see children, especially because it's we've just come through autumn in the Northern Hemisphere and winter, and we see children go out in their Wellingtons, and the first thing that they will do will be jump in a puddle. Whereas adults, we walk around them. We avoid the puddles. And I think it's a great metaphor for life. Is what builds a child's resilience is jumping into the puddles and finding out how deep it is, how much the water will seep into their Wellingtons. But we as adults, as we get older, start to avoid the puddles because we want to stay dry and comfortable. And I think that is one of the things that I love about you also, Pamela, that you and I both shared, is we definitely are puddle jumpers. We jump into the puddles to find out how deep we can go. And I think the thing that's very present as you speak about that is that level of awe, is the trust that you have and that we do share, Pamela, that there are greater forces beyond anything that we can have a say about or control or plan for. And that to me is also grace, where we tap into something that's bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
And do you experience that, Pamela, when in every moment, when are your heightened experiences of being filled with grace, of that mystery, of that awe, of that divine that we are constantly, for many of us, trying to understand? Where do those forces, where do the coincidences, the synchronicities, where does all that come from? Or where do you tap into it, more importantly?
Where or when, or is it both in both? All right. I would the first thing that comes up that is a relationship that I cultivate every single day, and it can be it can be in so many different shapes and forms. I receive that I can tap into that just with taking a breath, with leaning my back against a tree, holding a baby in my arms, in my pleasure practice in the morning, in my prayer before I eat, when I am dancing wild in ecstasy, when I look into another human's eyes and feel deeply connected, and I can feel our heartbeat. Right now,
I just wonder if we can pause for a moment, given that energy is a resonance and it's in a field. If everyone just paused for a moment and let's just breathe together. We're situated all over the world. I'm in Costa Rica. Others are in Sweden, others in England. And if we can just pause for a moment and just let's feel. And there's a little bit of noise in my background, and I hope it's not too loud. But if we just pause for a moment and feel into the field where we all are connected. And maybe close your eyes if the visuals distract you. And just let's feel into that resonance, into that field of grace. Regardless of our circumstances. And just notice if that, in this moment, you notice your nervous system coming down just that little bit. Your heart opening, expanding just that little bit. A little bit more. I think it's so important what you just said, Pamela, that it can happen in a moment. And those moments are so important.
Yeah, I deeply receive it within, in between, and beyond us, and it's always there, able to connect to.
Beautiful. I want to also go back to the aspect that you said of your pleasure ritual. So before I ask you yours, I think you also know mine, Pamela, and you've seen me be playful with it, which is for 30 years now, my own pleasure ritual is that every single morning of when I wake up and have my shower, that I want to calibrate the day by using the vibration of essential oils. They're our healers on the planet, and we so have taken them for granted in the cosmetic industry, who given aromatherapy a very bad name, but traditionally they've been used by wise women, witches, goddesses, and leaders of all forms to anoint their bodies and have their bodies be a temple to the soul. So every morning I do my own, you remember Pamela, dip, dip, rub, rub, my own little rituals, and I blend my oils and I massage my body every morning, and I love my body and I cherish it. I touch it and I remind it it's doing a great job. And so I bring grace in, but I'm also building my own resilience because it's a pleasure practice. And I'd love, maybe you don't want to share yours too deeply, but wherever that takes us. So I'm a little bit concerned now that I've opened that up.
I could feel you there, Karen. You was like, oops, what did I just invited her to?
Exactly. So whatever you think is appropriate, I want to record it.
And now we have this cultural background. I'm Swedish and you're English, Australian, you know, you're already there. We're not on the same page, darling.
Exactly.
Yeah, but
just on the topic of pleasure, wherever you want to take us with that. Yeah.
For me, pleasure practice in the essence means what increases my pleasure in the moment. So that can be a dance, that can be a shaking, that can be allowing my body to unwind in a specific TRE practice. It can be music, it can be meditation, it can be prayer. But I do have almost everyday specific practice when it comes to pleasure, and I would like to share it. And that is, I know there is one man on board in this conversation, what we know of, but the rest are women, and I know your target group is for women, so I will go with that perspective. First, I would like to say pleasure shifts our chemistry. Like when we shift our chemistry in our brain, because whatever brings us pleasure increases a nitric oxide. That's a kind of gas. Nitric oxide, it's a neurotransmitter. And that is like the top of the top neurotransmitter we have, because it regulates all the others, like serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, endorphin. So whatever gives us pleasure increases that nitric oxide. And that is actually as eating Prozac. But just to understand, like, what pleasure actually does in our systems. It is changing the chemistry of our brain. When we change the chemistry of our brain, we actually alter the parasympathetic nervous system. When we alter the parasympathetic nervous system, just by biology, we get more compassionate, more open-minded, increase our capacity for complexity, getting in tune with our bodies and our intuition. And all of these are traits that is needed in the fast-changing world we live in. It's leadership skills that is needed to make good decisions based on deep intuition. And that is what is required in a fast-changing world. So just for giving a little bit of a frame, and then as a woman, I have one organ in my body that is designed, what we know so far by science, for just creating pleasure. And that organ is my clitoris. So that is, for me, a beautiful way of using self-pleasure to increase my pleasure in my body through my clitoris, through my masturbation. Because in that way, I'm changing my chemistry, and I will walk out in life with a different toolbox to use, and my brain will actually support me. And I also see that, as you mentioned in the start, Karen, if we can just take the pandemic COVID-19, but also like we are, as many frontier thinkers says, in a meta crisis, and that means that it's easy to be scared and feel unsafe in an uncertain world. And when we are afraid, it's also easier to influence us and control us. So it's also about me as a leader really taking my pleasure seriously. No matter how I do it, if I do it with essential oil as you do, or as dance, or actually using to turn on my clitoris because it has 8,000 nerve endings just for pleasure. Like the way you're choosing, it's not the important part. Just choose whatever is aligned with you. But what happens for me as an individual, as a mother, as a member of a community, as a leader for an organization, or wherever I'm a leader in, is that it's easier for me to access my integrity. And the integrity for me is very related to resilience. Because when I can be deeply connected to my integrity and be more free by have changing the chemistry in my brain to access, to lead by my values, I also increase my resilience when things is challenging, because I am truthful to what's really important to me.
It's so great, Pamela, and it's such an important aspect to, and your expression of pleasure and your definition of why it's so important is critical. And I'm very present to how in the last decades, if not centuries, we have created institutions, structures, and systems that value rationale and the model of cause and effect, rationale, logic, left brain theory over the right. So we have one aspect where head has been overvalued from heart. And then we have another system that overplays on it, where we've been told as women not to have that pleasure. And we've been subordinated in I was in a conference call recently, and someone said the only institutions we will not be able to shake up or are so difficult, if not impossible, are the religious and the political systems. And religion has suppressed that notion of the value of pleasure and the importance of joy. And exactly what you said, when hormones are stimulated in our system, the right hormones, how we bring joy, but mostly, I love what you said, it restores our integrity. And as women, when we go into boardrooms or we go into corporate environments, we're told to use our head, not our heart. But as you said, in a pleasure practice, whatever that is, to actually return to our full integrity as women, as the feminine, every time is critical. And that is exactly the point of grace and resilience. Because you go on, please.
Yeah, no, but because as I see it, that pleasure is like a slingshot. It slingshots a woman into a new paradigm. Because it's actually because we have been, because of the patriarchy we have been through and still in, we have been suppressing the sexuality with a lot of shame. And sexuality is a part of your life force. It's a part of your authenticity. And it's also about women has learned, because of the suppression, that we're not good enough for whatever we are. And we've been taking on masculine shields to try to become men instead of becoming powerful in everything that makes us women, no matter what that is. So, and you mentioned a religion, and I actually see that choosing to be turned on is a spiritual state. But because for me, it's also, if I'm kind of picking a desire here, like really going for a deepest longing, and desire for me, it's not about being like egocentric or hedonistic. It is about really listening deeply into, you used the word soul before. Doesn't use that word so much, but I can use it right now. It's like deeply listening into what am I really longing for, and going for that curiosity. It will make you live a life out of what you dream of instead of following an agenda. And then again, we go back into integrity. And again, we go back into what is the values that is important and true for me, and in what way do I want to put them out in the world? And Karen, I'm just curious, should we invite, if there is
Yes.
anyone who is listening, what has been like coming alive in them right now? Is there any questions, or should we go on?
No, please, let's open up in the chat room for questions, and then we can continue depending on how many questions we get. So Vanessa's saying the feminine is rising and the masculine is following her.
Yeah, and I would like to say something there, because how I see it, the feminine and masculine lives in both of us, no matter women and men. And the feminine, you can say it is about sensing. Like, what is a deeper sensing that comes from like your body, your intuition, your deeper longing, the calling. And the masculine is making sense. And as like we're still living in the paradigm of rationality, and we are entering the paradigm of the more intuitive leadership, because that is about listening deeper. So the feminine is rising for me is also to say, human, no matter men and women, wake up and feel deeper what's really true. What is it that makes you come alive? We are not here to survive. We have come to a space in human development where we have created a world that we have survived, and we have been creating a world that we have so much technology that can support so many people on this earth. But going deeper and saying, what is it? How do we want to create a reality now where it's actually flourishing, as you said before?
Exactly, Pamela. One of the things that I see often is then when I use the word flourishing, often people will say, I'm only just surviving. How could I imagine flourishing? These practices that we're willing to inquire into and take a discipline. You said you have a daily practice. Every single woman that I'm working with over this series of conversations has a daily practice. There's not one that doesn't. And it's very particular as to why I've asked them into this conversation. Because I know for me, the daily practice of mastering, delving deeply into my own integrity and wisdom is critical. But this old notion that you spoke of, because it builds your integrity and resilience, Pamela, this is very important about the notion of resilience. It used to be the old model coming out of the war with stoicism and armoring up and pressing or forcing our way through a situation. That's determination, that's not resilience. Even the dictionary, I actually don't take any notice of the dictionary anymore. I've reinvented my own version of resilience. It's not bouncing back. It's actually having the intelligence and the wisdom to open our hearts and minds to the adversity we find ourselves in, and what's the narrative and the story I tell myself. But more importantly, what you pointed to is having our practices that every day build our resilience, not waiting for the setback to come. So the resilience practices you spoke of.
Yeah, and I also would like, again, just go back to the feminine is rising, the masculine is responding or following. For me, it is also when I respond, like we could say the feminine comes like from our values. This is not okay. Like if I look at what happens in the world right now, this is not okay. Then it's also about my masculine coming in and holding my integrity by setting a boundary. I cannot show up to work who requires that I disconnect from my body because I need to work in such a stressful environment, for example. So I also see this sentence of the feminine is rising. It's a call for humans to reconnect with ourselves, both our body, our intuition, each other, planet, animals, and so on, to be able to lead ourselves into a more flourishing paradigm. And yeah, and for me, yeah, and I would just go on, Karen, if you want to come.
No, please. And for you can please finish.
Mm. Mm.
I'd like to respond to Debbie's note in the chat, which is working with a lot of women that are going through menopause and their desire to truly reveal who they are and what they want at this beautiful phase in their lives, and it starts to become critical. One of the things that I noticed when I arrived 4 years ago or 5 years ago at this notion of leading with grace and resilience, Pamela, was my own need for that. I had been raised by a very strong, chauvinistic, misogynistic father. Even though he had 3 daughters, his background to women was very harsh and almost violent. So the thing that I learned to do was toughen up. And I was even told when I was small, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. So the notion of being emotional or feeling sensitive or having sensibilities to the world and feeling compassion, which I deeply am because I'm a healer by background, is that this notion that we grow into, and now I'm in my early 60s, my birthday like a week ago or so, and I'm now 62, so I'm very present too. And I'm with my daughter at the moment and around young women who have still got their menstrual cycles. And I had this moment coming into Costa Rica, where I am right now, to see her and to be in this vibrant, amazing environment. I almost had this yearning to have my menstrual cycle back. It's like, oh, I've forgotten that rhythm in my body. And then I was like, oh, how do I have that, not have that, because I'm now at a different phase, but how do we really invoke and encourage women who are in this wise woman stage? And you and I had a conversation recently where I think it was you, Pamela, that said to me, a witch is someone that scares life into people.
The life into people.
The life into people, and a healer is the one that brings life into life. And I do consider myself both. But I think, as you said, that which part of me that what gets curious and says it's not okay. I think I found more of that power. I was feisty before, and now I just bring my integrity and say this is not okay. So this notion of resilience is so important that you spoke of, and these practices, Pamela.
But here it evokes something in me, Karen, and then I will go for the third word, and that is love, because we touch desire and pleasure, and I would like to touch love. Because the great shift, and I think it was Debbie writing about it in the chat as well. The great shift for me happened because I can so relate to you, Karen, when you say like, yeah, this part of me is like, no, like holding my boundaries, I know this is not okay. But the great shift for me happened when I landed in a wholeness in me. And for me, that means like a deep love and compassion for everything that I am. Like for everything that I am, everything that I've experienced, every expression of me. And by that, coming to a space where there is no other choice, because there is nothing that I want more than just enjoy life. And in that enjoyment, I really want to allow everything that is truly me. And that means like the receptivity I have, the vulnerability I have, the sensitivity I have, like being able to have a relaxed body because I don't so much not so I don't so often anymore go into tensing up and go into capacity, forcing, holding. It's just a no. I don't want to be in that space anymore. I know I can just work in a way that is not human, and I can go on for days with hardly eating or sleeping, but I will tense up, and that it's just like I've come to this place of such a deep love that why would I treat myself that way? Like, why would I want to not have a relaxed life? Like, really. Because
It's insanity, really.
yes, it is insanity. It is almost psychopathic, like to be so disconnected and to be so like, it's just like, no, because in the relaxation I can feel, I can see the awe and beauty, and I can by that access love, and I can access the ecstatic possibilities that we as humans have. And I can feel it's not about having a happy life all the time, because life is, that's how I see it. Life is both pain and pleasure. Like, it's I can see when I was listening to news both today and yesterday, like I start crying. It hit my heart so hard because it was it was not nice. It was painful to share that experience that I received through the news.
Mm.
But it is still an experience, and being open, and then so
Mm.
but constantly choosing, like, what I need and what I desire and what my boundaries is act of love,
Mm.
and choosing a life in relaxation and feeling pulled. You started out our conversation, Karen, by saying that if I have this experience of being connected to something that is bigger than me, and for me, I feel connected, like, to life force itself, and
Mm.
I feel that it's pulling me through life. It's, and you could say, in other words, intuition, but it actually is pulling me in the direction of where life wants me to go, to explore more life, whatever that means, pain or pleasure.
And that actually is flourishing, Pamela. Because
Mm.
if we pause for a moment to just consider what you just said, is in being pulled by life. Not many people sit and have to think about breathing until we get mindful and we're trying to regulate our nervous system and we consciously or mindfully breathe. But if we think about breath for a moment, it's as if life is breathing us and it comes through us. And life is here through us, for us to flourish. And listening to that calling, listening to the moments, as you just said, where just let me check. Do I need some time out? And I noticed for myself, the most terrific experience I had was when I broke my back. And everyone said to me, of all people, Karen, we know you'll do great. And it was the first time I said, could you give me a minute? I'm not there yet.
Mm.
And it took me 3 months to heal physically, but 18 months to heal emotionally, because that was such a big, traumatic episode. So we do need these moments, Pamela, also for our resilience, as you said, for the pain that we feel, to move away and cry, to come back to our place, to find our place again and find where, through love, through these practices that you've said, this is how we build our resilience. And in a corporate environment, when we start relating to each other as human beings with pulsating, beating hearts that feel the suffering and the pain and the challenges and the disturbances that we personally feel, it's in the collective. But when we come back to our heart space and fulfilling our desires and living by our values, as you said, this is building our resilience. So in a corporate environment, these aspects of being relaxed and being joyful and fulfilling our desires and having pleasure don't seem like they're possible. And I'd love you just in our final few minutes, Pamela, to say a little bit about that, because I know we both spend a lot of time coaching and supporting women in corporate environments, particularly around these topics and these principles that you're speaking about. What can you offer women that are in those very tough corporate worlds? As suggestions or thoughts?
I would say lean back, slow down, allow yourself to get soft and sensual. And for me, that is aka playful. To allow yourself to really tap into your receptivity. So you are able to listen as deep as you are capable, because you are a life giver. Because as a woman, you're designed to carry life. So I believe that we are designed with a capacity of listening deeper and sensing the subtlety, sensing what's in between the worlds, sensing what's in between people and what wants to get birthed into life. So allow yourself to flourish in that intelligence. And I am so convinced in the times we're living right now that that is the leadership that is required in the fast changing world we're living in. And for going to a regenerative leadership or a flourishing leadership or whatever word we want to put on it, but also put your pleasure on your highest priority. Because when you shift your chemistry in your brain, you are shining. And you are putting yourself in deeper resilience. And by that, a capacity to hold your integrity when you meet the old paradigm. And be able to voice without force. Be able to voice without needing to control or manipulate or change anyone. Just voicing your truth. And then get yourself a sister circle, no matter if it's included men and women or only women. A circle where you can go back and fuel. Exactly. Someone you can lean your back on and just knowing that we are creating this together, even if they are not always with you in your corporate world. So having a space where you can, I'm missing out the best English word for it, so I'm saying fueling.
That's a great word. Yeah. And Pamela, one of the things that you just mentioned that I think is so important is when you said no fighting, no controlling, no manipulating. I think the other thing that I see a lot that actually is even more destructive is the appeasement, is when we dissociate from our truths and we compromise what we know to be true and our integrity, and then we appease the system. And by appease, we surrender to it, we won't speak out, we won't say anything, I don't want to be disruptive, I want to be a good girl, all of those messages that we got to sit down, shut up, and don't speak out when we were little. And that appeasement is a huge, huge cost.
Yeah. And that what you're saying, I would like to add on. I'm fully with you, Karen, but I would like to add on that to invite, now again, I will speak mostly to women, but I would like to invite you to truly deeply understand your biological design. As I said, you are designed to birth life. It means that you are designed to navigate the unknown. You have a high capacity to navigate the unknown. And what does that mean? It means when the birth is starting and the baby is going gonna, the life is penetrating you, and the birth is penetrating you, and the baby is coming out, you are surrendering into the unknown, because you do not have any control in that process. Even if you can believe you have, but you have not. It is a process of itself, as I see life is. So trust when you speak your truth, that whatever unknown that will come from that you have a strong capability of navigating in it. Even if there is fear coming up and you want to go into appeasing, as you, Karen, so beautiful said, but just start to trust your inner voice, start to trust your, like, being inner directed, and just keep on practicing to navigate in the unknown.
Beautiful. And one of the things, because you've mentioned childbirthing or giving birth, Pamela, I've often said to people recently, and particularly women, don't force it, because when you force through a contraction, you tear. So you've got to go with the contraction, you've got to go back and then go forward. And there's no forcing and there's no making it happen.
That's a good one. I'm going to save that one. I'm going to quote you, Karen.
So thank you so much, Pamela. We're just at the top of the hour, and I just want to say to all the participants that thank you so much for joining these conversations. We're having so much fun through them all. Next week we have Katrine, who is going to be talking about the importance of breath work and embodiment, and she's a stunning practitioner and a beautiful leader, good friend of Pamela and mine, and she'll be on the journey with us next week. I'm going to put you, unless you tell me otherwise, I'm going to put you onto the newsletter so I can update you on these conversations. Please contact Pamela. Could you just type your email address into the chat box so that people can contact you? And I will do the same. And if you make sure it goes out to, I think we can do to everyone, or maybe not. Yeah, we can. We're going to put our email addresses into the chat box so that you can contact either Pamela or I for further conversations. And Pamela, is there anything that you have coming up that you want people to know about in terms of webinars or online programs?
Yeah, there is several things coming up, but watch my social media, and you will see it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Love you so much, Pamela. Thank you,
Karen. Thank all of you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.